Thanks for tuning into the first episode of Money on the Table, the podcast where we'll talk about pricing and packaging for software companies. I'm Tjitte, your host, and today we have none other than Darragh Curran, CTO at Intercom. He's responsible for pricing at Intercom, which is one of the most famous examples of outcome-based pricing done right. We'll talk about Intercom's pricing journey to date and how they shifted from a seat-based pricing to an outcome-based pricing with their AI solution Fin. Our conversation really opened my eyes towards the flywheel effect that's created when combining outcome-based pricing with AI solutions. I hope you will enjoy my conversation with Darragh as much as I have. Have fun listening. Thank you so much for being on the pod today. Before we dive in, I think the majority of people will know Intercom, but maybe you can share a few words on what you guys are doing.
Sure thing. Intercom is the AI customer service company. We have two things really. We have our Intercom suite, which is a familiar platform for customer service teams to run support on all their channels, modern AI-powered tools, and then we have Fin, our AI customer service agent, the first and best in market. Our vision there is that over some time frame, Fin will do the majority, or in fact already can do the majority, but we'll do approaching 100% of customer service volume, and do it to as good or better standard, much faster and much more cost effective than humans. So that's what we're doing.
Thanks. I mean, I think it's obvious that we're gonna talk a little bit about Fin today and the outcome-based pricing, because right now that's being discussed a lot, just in general, but especially the Intercom pricing. But before we go there, I'm curious. First of all, why is the CTO in charge of the pricing? Right? We previously discussed this before, but I think it's interesting to share that. And then also, how's the pricing developed for you guys over the year?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with the second part first, because it will be context for
the
first one. So how has the pricing developed over the years? So, when Intercom started, all of the energy and passion was trying to build the product that we had in mind that needed to exist in the world and get that in the hands of customers. And, the very first couple of months or quarters was all about that, and then it was like, wow, we have something people like, they really want this. It would be dumb not to try to exchange some value there and put a price on it, so that we can continue to grow the business or whatever. And it started in insanely simple. If I recall, it was simply $50 a month per company, which it is nice and simple, but kind of dumb too. You don't capture the value you're delivering to bigger companies. But what was great for Intercom in the early days was just how viral it took off amongst kind of the startup community. It was fair and accessible pricing. And
were you guys venture backed at the time or bootstrapped?
Yeah, Intercom has always, since very early stage seed investment, and then I think our Series A probably happened after we had some revenue, but not very long after. The early revenue growth at Intercom was incredible, from 1 million to 5 to 20, or that in today's world that doesn't sound that impressive, but it was.
No, it still does, except for some AI companies perhaps. But
some AI companies are doing incredible numbers.
Do you think, sorry to interrupt you, but do you think that allowed you to leave the pricing for a while for what it was, versus if you would bootstrap?
Yeah, I don't know that this was deliberate or conscious really at the time, but I think it did allow us to focus on building the product that kind of grabbed market demand, and we didn't put pricing as a friction in the way of capturing that, and that contributed to greater word of mouth, etc. And I think at every stage you're kind of playing with a little bit of that tension between revenue optimization versus kind of long-term maybe revenue optimization.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was sort of accidental in those early years. We didn't quite know what we were doing. We didn't have a sales team or anything like that. Like Intercom, its DNA was like builders, like people wanting to build something great, and the kind of making money part was obviously part of the goal, but it was a nice side effect from building something people loved.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's maybe that's the early days, and then there's like real ambition and pressure to we're something incredible here. We can really grow a serious business, and like I mentioned, we didn't have a sales org or anything. So as we started to establish those functions, none of us really having much experience in this before. It was like, we obviously need to do what all those other kind of companies do, and like establish the playbook for like going up market and enterprise sales, and like this wasn't all in one step per se. It was like kind of boiling the frog, lots and lots of incremental things. But
at what stage did you guys start considering that?
Like having a sales team, or sort of really kind of going up market?
Just going up market, like what like in terms of ARR or something?
Like it's sort of fuzzy, but I'd say sort of like 50 million-ish, or it's fuzzy because some of this kind of happens to you. You have like bigger customers that like are punching through the ceiling of where you are at various points in time, and then one or two is like, they're outliers. But when you have like a couple dozen, then you're like, okay, we've got like some traction at this kind of tier. But anyways, that like, again, I'm compressing time dramatically here, but this kind of era led to us trying a few iterations of pricing models, kind of doing a bad job or maybe the default path, which is just hard, of like accumulating them. Like it's very hard to do tidying up, like to undo pricing models. You kind of often need to live with them for a long time. So I had like an accumulation of pricing models getting progressively more complex, and in hindsight, it really, for sure led and contributed to some great growth in the near term, but at a cost. And the cost, as I see it, was just burning some of the trust we had with our customers, making it overly complicated, putting paywalls in front of all the things, combining that with like not great experience when they needed to spend money, like often waiting or not getting answers they needed from sales teams, etc. And all of that just accumulated in like trashing the brand and goodwill we built in the early days.
Yeah.
And then, Intercom being perceived as being like not good value, or not having good trust amongst customers from a commercial point of view. And then we can get into it maybe a little later, but we've been on a real redemption arc, I guess, like trying to correct the mistakes of the past, and I'm quite proud of how we've addressed that in recent times. I think your first question was, how did
CTO become? I mean, and in terms of, by the way, redemption, I think you guys are mentioned most often when it comes to like how to do outcome-based pricing. You seem to be at the frontier, so I think you got your spot back.
Yeah, I hope so. And like honestly, the outcome-based pricing at Finn is part of that, but we've put in a tremendous amount of work on the platform pricing models, and it's not just like, it's never just the pricing model, it's the experience around it. It's like, does my invoice make sense? If I have a question, do I get prompt and helpful replies? If I want to spend money, do I run into bullshit friction, or is it like, is it pleasant? It's all the things. Is the pricing model like fair and aligned to value. All of these things contribute, and
Yeah.
yeah. So should I jump back to the
Yeah,
why-
please,
why
please
am I
do.
doing-
I mean,
I mean, I
I
asked
got a
myself
million more questions, but like let's yeah, spend a few seconds on this as well.
like I do ask myself the question every day I wake up. It's like, why the hell am I doing this pricing thing? Maybe the quick answer is that, or well, it's not super quick, but Owen, our founder, CEO, returned to like the CEO role after a couple of years,
Yeah.
not in day-to-day operations of the company. And it was just after this kind of period of, I don't know, the ZERP era, post-COVID, etc., where, you know, companies were growing by accident almost. Like,
Yeah.
you know, everyone thought they were great, but when the kind of music stopped, there was a lot of surprise, let's say. And Intercom weren't immune to that. It certainly exposed some of our issues. Owen came back and had a really clear vision of what we want to do and the problems we must fix. Pricing was one of them for the reasons I mentioned.
Yeah.
And Owen really cared about kind of first principles thinking and like solving with the long term in mind. Often, I think just the incentives are such that when pricing, for example, is owned by go-to-market teams, often the natural incentives pull you towards risk aversion or short-term gain.
Yeah.
The risk aversion might be like unwillingness or anxiety about making bigger changes, and the short-term gain will be like kind of chasing this quarter or maybe this year rather than thinking on a multi-year time frame.
Yeah.
So that was one factor. You know, obviously Owen needed someone he felt he could delegate this to. Another factor was like it's never just one thing, like pricing was an issue, but the systems that underpinned all this made it really hard for us to iterate, really hard for our selling teams to do a good job. They were just not equipped with the right tools or visibility, etc. You know, we've a strong self-serve business as well. There's a lot of underinvestment in just the quality of experience there. We had vendors under the hood that weren't really aligned with like our long-term vision, and weren't, you know, we didn't think we're going to be relevant to the type of business we want to build. So there was a huge kind of engineering investment in parallel to the pricing work to get our systems to a healthy state so that we could frankly like reclaim our kind of ability to iterate here. Like
Yeah.
on the product side, like our pace of innovation has always been a real strength at Intercom, and you know, in hindsight, we really let that languish and be not great at all on the kind of go-to-market side. And you know, the reality of a business is you need both to work well. You need your product to work well and your go-to-market, and they're both software, or they're both heavily like software reliant. And you know, it was complete polar opposites in terms of the health of the posture on both. So it made sense for engineering to be heavily involved here to kind of turn that ship around.
Yeah. It's interesting. You mentioned short term versus long term. I think that's always a hard balance. Have you developed your own like pricing philosophy during those years?
Me personally, yeah. Like let me think how I can crisply articulate it. Like, I guess things I care about a lot are the, you know, think about pricing kind of as a product experience. Like it should be simple, fair, transparent, easy to understand, easy to use, as in like buying. You know, it shouldn't be like major surprises. You should have a lot of control. So a lot of these kind of themes come up in the philosophy. And then I think from a pricing strategy point of view, like kind of knowing your place in the market and what your ambitions are. I I think on reflection, maybe some of our pricing decisions of the past were more leaning towards revenue optimization than which is good if
I mean, you are running. You could make the argument you're running a business, right? So you have to. So
yeah, absolutely. Like, you want to get that kind of good exchange of value, but I think our ambitions have always been to have a much bigger capture of the market, to dominate the market. And like, if you've 1% of the market and you flip into a mode of trying to like optimize that 1%, you're doing that at the expense of trying to have 10% or 20%.
Yeah.
So I think certainly my bias has always been, and it's hard because it's there's risk to it, but it's always been trying to lower that barrier, make it easier to access the product. You know, even simple things like, and you know, this example is kind of like niche towards the sort of lower end of the market, but you know, one revenue optimizing kind of tactic you can have is like seat minimums. Oh, you know, you must have 5 seats in order to access this. And we have a lot of really great small businesses that need 2 or 3 seats. So we're kind of like punishing them and putting a higher barrier. So even though our per seat price was good and they were happy with, they're like felt really squeezed to have to do that. So, you know, that's a short-term optimization, I think, is to squeeze them there, and it's at the expense of like all of them word of mouth telling, you know, oh, Intercom's not for you. You don't get started on Intercom because they you know, they have these seat minimums and stuff. So and if you get it right in the other direction, you can do a great job of capturing all those great small companies, many of which will grow to be big companies. And you know, so philosophically, like I think I'm allergic to revenue that's not backed by a good exchange of value. So like paying for 5 seats when you use 2 just feels dumb to me. Paying for add-ons that you know, regardless of whether you get value from them, I don't like. So
just in general, or when it's too many?
Like there's some degree of pragmatism. Like, you know, I'm sure there's stats in the industry, but like lots of people buy stuff with good intent and plans to use it, and then stuff changes at their company and whatever. Yeah. So there's always going to be some percentage of like your revenue that like is uncontrollably like not used. Like it's in good faith that you sold it. It's good faith that they bought it. The intent was all there. But beyond that, and then also sometimes it just takes a little while for people to follow through on the thing. There might be internal change or whatever. So
would you rather than have it included in the standard offering?
Right. Yeah. Like just add-on versus included, I think is an interesting dilemma. Like, again, none of these things are in isolation. Like, if you've built something that is of, you know, meaningful value, like one of the things where we do have an add-on today is our Copilot, AI Copilot product. And, you know, the feedback from our early customers was that it's been tremendous at like helping their team be more efficient. Yeah. You know, one of the other bits of feedback was, hey, this is really great for some of our team and others don't need it. So we kind of made it possible for them to add that to just the people who need it. You know, so that was kind of leaning into this idea of not trying to charge for non-usage. What about including that in our base seats? We certainly debated that. I think the challenge there is, well, there's like actually the value delivered here is real, and there's people are willing to pay for it. So if you put it in the seats, do you are you getting, like, often I think about this trade-off. Like, I would do that if I believed that would lead to outsized growth and
Yeah.
demand, and that would be the path might bias towards. But when you do that, also when you're building a new product, I think a really valuable feedback signal on building something new is, will people pay for it? And you give that signal away. So there's trade-offs in lots of directions. And the kind of happy path that we found on it was we include a chunk of that usage. Like we figured out through our beta, like what does the median user, what amount of usage should I use? And let's give that to everybody as part of the base seats. And then the kind of 10 or 20% of usage that goes far beyond that, I think it feels good to monetize that. And so that's kind of how
That makes sense. Because what you said is very important. I think like explainability, right? Being able to understand what is on the quote or the invoice I get at the end of the month. Like, why am I paying this and what is it actually? And then the funny thing, what we see is like when entrepreneurs, founders start out building a company, for the first 5 million, they will keep on saying, no, I don't want to change my pricing. I'd rather just build these things first and monetize these new things I'm going to build. Right. And the thing they kind of forget is like, if you keep on adding stuff, that also means there's a likelihood of like some users not using part of your solution. Mm-hmm. And exactly like with the seats you just mentioned, right? So let's say you have like at least 5 seats. There will also be modules you're adding for free, people are not using, and they will be looking at it and thinking, hey, I'm paying this package, right, for this full package, but I'm only using 60% of it. Yeah. People just generally don't like it. So I'm glad you mentioned explainability, right? And like getting, like paying for value. It seems you guys are covering that very well. And like, maybe then spend some time like, okay, you guys had a lot more add-ons. Yeah. And you reduced it to a lot, to just 2. What is it right now? Or just not that many anymore? Like, how did that come about? And like, how did you make those decisions?
Like some of it was really just based on intuition and maybe not wanting to fall into the trap of like small corrections from what we felt was a really broken state. Like all of your instincts, and like it really took kind of permission and push from own this time to like not do that and not just make an incremental step. Like we all felt that we were in a really broken state, and like an increment from that is still going to be quite broken. Yeah. So it was like, let's take a big step in the opposite direction. Let's think hard about the we've got a really great research team here that talked to like loads of customers, had all sorts of signal over the years on like the bad support experiences people have relating to pricing and billing. We had this big body of work of like, let's understand it all, and let's really think big about solving this in a way we'd be proud of. And you know, we were and still are like embarrassed about how broken it had become. So there was a lot of just determination to do something good here. And then the add-on thing really like this is kind of like maybe steering towards Finn a little bit, but one of our most successful add-ons previously was our resolution bot add-on. So this was the pre-ChatGPT kind of cutting edge AI bot for automatically solving customer questions. And the pricing model for it was a per seat add-on. So, if you 50 seats, you pay, I think it was about $30 per seat per month for ResBot.
For Finn.
Well, this was for ResBot. This is the precursor to Finn, right? And that, from a revenue point of view, that was one of our like best ever add-ons. Yeah. It was easy to sell.
When was this? Because was this in the time that all of a sudden companies had these AI budgets they had to spend?
No, prior to that.
Prior to that, okay.
Yeah, like 20, I want to say like 17, 2018, like a long time. The product has existed for quite a while. Yeah. And it was this per seat add-on thing. But when we started to dig in on it, I was like really dissatisfied with like the spectrum of usage that existed behind that.
Yeah.
And like the vast majority, like, well, the way, one way to look at it is, okay, if you think about it, how we think about pricing now, which is per resolution or whatever,
Yeah.
what was it costing people per resolution? Maybe half of them never got any because they didn't
Yeah.
set it up. It was complex to set up. Fin is much easier to set up. So half of them were like paying for something they got no value of. That's kind of risky revenue to have in your book, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe 40% of them were getting like really low amount of value because
Yeah.
they'd done initial setup but not really got it to the point that it was great. And then 10% were getting insane value.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like
Completely distorted, right?
so
Yeah.
like it was 2 or 3 orders of magnitude between
Yeah.
the best and worst. So the pricing structure just wasn't. You know, the people getting insane value were like laughing about it.
Yeah,
So
well,
it was,
90% is saying like, why am I even paying for this? And 10% saying like, you idiots, like I
yeah,
would be
yeah.
paying 10 times this much. Yeah.
And like I think nobody really wins in that scenario. Or well, small number of people maybe do. Uh, yeah, but
I mean,
yeah,
even then, so, like you risk, like I hear this all the time when companies offer a solution that's too cheap. People go there the first time like, hey, this pricing doesn't even make sense to me. This must be like a terrible company or a terrible solution because the price is just too low, right? So even the ones are getting too much value, they might think, hey, why am I paying this little? And might start looking for a different solution because they have this emotional feeling like, hey, there must be a better solution just because these guys are too cheap, right? You risk that as well.
yeah, and like maybe back to this whole idea of like when you're early stage and you're launching, building something new, and like do you charge for it or not? Like I think there's something really healthy about just that feedback loop of uh, you know, charging, finding what a fair price is, like
Yeah.
and then that being like you know, the combination of like, are people using it? Are they valuing it? Are they happy to pay? If all those things are checking off, that's a very investable product. You can like
Yeah.
feel very confident to build and iterate and improve on that. If you know, package it in with a bunch of other things, that signal's far weaker, and you know, often you end up like hedging your bets across a lot of the surface area of your product. So there's definitely like perhaps our journey of going complex and then simplifying had some upside for us in terms of understanding our customers a lot better.
Yeah.
We haven't done it in that way, but there's definitely some good lessons from it, I think.
This is super interesting, but let's go back to Finn because that one is super interesting, right? Like you guys have come a long way. You even said at some point, you know what? Let's wipe the slate. Let's start over, which already takes balls, by the way. And it's great to hear you say, yeah, we didn't want to take incremental steps. But now you are actually known for a pricing that is quite pioneering. I know there's a lot of companies that claim to be outcome based, which in my opinion is just usage 2.0, right? But you guys actually like tie directly to resolutions, right?
Yeah.
How did you guys get there? How was it like? I can imagine a CTO, this must be a nightmare, right? Like someone from go-to-market might say this makes sense, but then you say, okay, this also has to like be built technically. Can you just walk us through like how did you guys get there? What has been the results? Are you satisfied or yeah? I'm super curious about this.
Yeah, I should say like part of I think I'm certain it's the case that like, you know, Finn wasn't the first example of like outcome-based pricing ever, but I think we were certainly first building this modern era of AI customer service agent,
Yeah.
and so we launched early and we took a bold approach to pricing. So I think the combination of those two things, I think this era of AI applications is probably the turning point where you can have pricing models that like reflect the work being done, not the tool that you're delivering. So like the outcome. So I think that, you know, the idea has always existed, but this moment in the market with that AI has precipitated has meant that like this perhaps is now getting traction way more than it had in the past.
Yeah.
And Finn were just first out of the blocks and took a bold position here. How did we get there? Like, honestly, when we were, you know, I think it was January 2023, you know, Finn was in beta, maybe in and around then. And we were, you know, doing the research, doing all the exploration of, hey, how should we price these things, and all the full spectrum from like, you know, probably weren't going to do an add-on or flat pricing, usage-based, you know, per conversation. Should it be like passed through on like LLM costs, like or this resolution idea?
Yeah.
A lot of it was sort of influenced by, or for me at least, was just the observation of how the resolution product had worked out, and how like we had this massive spread of like effective cost per value that wasn't at all correlated to like the real value that was delivering or the willingness to pay. It was just like wild and all over the map. And I personally had a particular hatred for the charging when there wasn't a clear bit of value delivery. So like my bias was heavily towards the resolution thing from the start.
Can especially imagine, right? Because you're building a solution that, especially in those early days, is not working perfectly. So you otherwise you'd be charging people for a solution that might not actually have the outcome you should be delivering, right?
Yeah. Like in those early days, like Finn in the early days had an average resolution rate of 26% or 25%, and that's like, you know, if you can have a support team a quarter smaller, that's real, you know, real impact for your business. But like that was not like our vision was always Finn's going to do 99% or 95% or whatever. So we were always thinking about that long game, and you know, in the time since then, our average resolution rate is in the, you know, 56%, I think, and we just this like, we have this amazing machine that we keep finding incremental gains there, just consistently. It's really beautiful.
Was that then maybe the break point, like where you say, okay, maybe now we get to 50%. This is where we actually dare to take this step towards resolution-based pricing?
Well, we took the step towards resolution-based pricing at the start.
Okay.
Yeah, right at the start with Finn, and we kind of had these willingness to pay surveys that were like, you know, $2 to $5 the range, and you know, LLM costs, and it was very hard to get availability of LLMs. You're overpaying to get access, all this sort of stuff. Like $2, I think at the time was almost hard to justify. Like it was like, hey, this is we're losing money here, or until we're successful, we're losing money here. And of course, the dynamic changes, and but we took a bolder stance. We're like, hey, these things have to get a little cheaper. Let's price this at a price point that is more aggressive, because we want wide distribution. Where like our goal here isn't first and foremost to make a quick buck. Our goal is to change the industry and to be leaders there and have the widest distribution possible. So we took that stance, and we've stuck to that. And like, the way I think about the resolution pricing is like, hey, this clean exchange of value, but also the aligned incentives. Like our vision had always been to make Finn better and better and better, and do more and more of your volume. And we've invested really heavily, like, you know, tens or $100 million in like building the product and bringing it to market. And what I like is that you know, the ideal framing here for me is like, when people buy Fin, every dollar they get to spend, they're delighted. They're getting like such positive ROI. And the beautiful thing about us investing in the product with this pricing metric is it's a non-linear ROI for customers. Like the first 10% of your volume is actually quite easy.
Yeah.
The last 10% is very, very hard. And like in between, so like going from 26% to 56% isn't like doubling the amount of value delivered. It's probably 3 or 4x in the value delivered. So we got this quite beautiful dynamic where as people lean into Fin, they're spending more, but they're getting incrementally even higher ROI. And all of that just motivates us to continue building the best product ever.
I think one of the most ideal things about this whole situation is you guys are literally making money if your more money if your product is delivering like a better outcome, right? At the same time, your whole product team is fixated on getting this accuracy up, right? So you now have a North Star that's the same for your go-to-market team as for your engineering team, which is
the purity of it is just really powerful.
Yeah.
You know, like again, compare and contrast with our resolution bot thing, you know, we had a sales team that were great at selling the thing, but people never used it. What good is that to anybody? The product team have built the thing people aren't using. They're not getting feedback on how to improve it. It's just such a weak, weak alignment of effort. Whereas with Fin, it's really, really pure. So yeah, very, very proud of that aspect of it.
Is there something after resolution pricing? I'm curious, right? Because if I can be the devil's advocate for a moment, I could say resolution right now, if I'm not mistaken, on the website says either someone like who is using the bot on the other side just says, okay, it is resolved, or someone basically stops chatting with it, right?
Yeah.
But you're still not measuring whether this person is now more satisfied than before or just gives up, right? So is there a step beyond that where you say, hey, you know what, we go even as far as saying we're going to make your customers happier, right? Could you go, just theoretically speaking, right? I'm not saying you should, because I think this model is already amazing, but could you take that next step?
Yeah, like, it's a good question. There's a lot of gray area between like the incredibly happy, clearly, solved issue, and we've given the right answer, and the customer's kind of just bounced, and some of those maybe we didn't give the right answer, and so. The same is true, by the way, with humans, and like often the questions aren't clear, the answers are like maybe incomplete. So like you have this idea of like recontact rate, like people come back with a follow-up question, you might have given them part of the answer.
Yeah.
So the whole problem space is like complex. What we released last week actually is all of our like AI Insights product. One aspect of that is this concept of like CX score, this AI powered customer experience metric, where we look at all of the conversations and have kind of a way to score like how, was this actually a resolution? Was this a good customer experience? And there's like lots of inputs into that. One other thing that gives you like just a very practical example to like attack the idea that some resolutions are maybe not complete or weak. We surface that to in the product. So like you can, as a user of Fin, you can kind of monitor that long tail of kind of potentially not ideal responses. You can jump in. If you jump in and sort of steer the user, you don't pay for Fin in that case. We're surfacing the cases where we don't think Fin has necessarily done a great job, but the user has gone away, and the CX score helps you see those and then take action. If you take action, you don't pay for it, but more importantly, it also lets you take action to improve your Fin system so that it
Yeah.
can do a better job next time. So we
Yeah.
have like, you know, content suggestions. Hey, there's a gap in the content that means that the answer here is never going to be complete. We suggest adding that, and it learns from what your humans do, so that you know you don't have to repeat that work. So, there, yeah, we also kind of looked at like a version of a pricing metrics that like you know it's like AI verified resolutions, like where you kind of take a subset of you basically only stand over a subset of them.
Yeah.
And in all our research and testing with customers, they did not prefer that over the model that we have.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, you get into the why, but I think it was another layer of like indirection or complexity that they had to think about, and already there are some challenges with I think outcome-based pricing where they don't know how to predict things, and you're just making that more complicated for them, I guess.
Yeah. I'm afraid we're running out of time, and I do want to respect yours.
Yeah, no worries.
I've got a million more questions, but maybe I will just send them over afterwards.
Sure.
Let me thank you so much for your time. It was great. I think there's a lot of nuggets in there. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. It's a fun chat, and happy to follow up anytime.